with that, I would like to tell you a bit more about the different maturity stages we see that a company needs in order for the different price strategies to be fully enabled. And we've divided them in 5 steps. 3 and 4 can be a discussion about. You can intertwine those depending on your industry and the level you're in. But for the sake for today's webinar, I've put it like this. And basically, the first maturity level is most of the time a cost-based plus or a margin markup strategy where you're really looking, what's my cost of my product? I want to have a minimum margin or a markup, and that's my selling price, which is mostly done via Excel or can even be done via an ERP system, but it's not a very sophisticated way of doing it. But at least you make sure you always have a margin target and you're okay to deal with that. Then we have the second step. And at some point, you want to take into account what is my competitive field doing, right? So what's happening in the market, trying to get that data in and to evaluate which price position you're doing and getting the best results for your different products. And after that, we go into 3, and that's a value-based pricing approach. And that means a whole different way of thinking about pricing, because then you're looking into where do we add value? So what's the value added of our specific product or service, and how can we monetize upon that? That's a pretty extensive process to go through, and it really shows you, and in the end, you get a value map where you see, okay, so this is where we're adding value, and how can you then monetize upon those values, and what's the percentage of the total pie you actually can take and what's still able to sell properly. And then you have 4, and that's the rule-based automation pricing. And that's when we talked about really about price automation. So that's basically your cost-based plus strategy or your competitor information, everything, all that information that comes in, or your value mapping. You've determined that your proposition is that you can always be 2% more expensive than your direct competitor, but not more expensive than another competitor, etc. Right? You automate that full process into business logic where you can say, if this, then that, and you can make a whole automation tree out of that, and you can build your strategies on top of that. You link that with your ERP system or your PIM system, which basically means that your day-to-day operational pricing is automated and you don't have to look around it, and it's just more about how to set the right strategy. We call that rule-based automation pricing. But on top of that, you also want to go to AI-based pricing. So basically, that's the 5th step. And then we're talking more about price sensitivity and algorithm-based pricing and price elasticity, where we take into account more data, when we let the algorithm learn from itself, where we think about what are the drivers, how to impact those. And in order to do that, it means there is a broader data set necessary, but also there is a certain maturity of the data set necessary. One of the things, for example, we see happening many, many times is that in the B2B industry, a lot of salespeople just can do the deal, right? They do whatever they have to do to close it. So there is no real fixed way of doing it. So if your pricing is all over the place, it's very difficult for models, because then you first have to normalize it. You have to take some things into consideration before you can actually do a proper analysis on top of that. So if you already have price automation before that, it means you have, in a very organized way, you get the data in, and then you can do some proper analysis on top of that. So most of the companies are in step 1 or 2, some more are in 3. And then what I say, it's value-based pricing, rule-based automation can also be done on cost-based and competitors. So we see that happening a lot, specifically in the e-commerce industry, for example. So a lot of people have that in place, but not for the full portfolio, and not with, it's more about when we talk then about the race to the bottom, right? So we just want to be the cheapest, and you keep on decreasing your prices without looking into what's your own transactional data and how to utilize on that. And then we have the step 5.